Muammar Gaddafi died the richest man in the world, with an estimated net worth of around $200 billion, more than Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Carlos Slim combined. His wife, Safia Farkash, reportedly owned 20 tons of gold, making her worth approximately $1 billion. Yet despite his vast fortune, Gaddafi's life ended in chaos, hunted by his own people. This is the fascinating story of one of history's most controversial and enigmatic leaders. From his rise to power to his brutal downfall, his legacy remains both feared and admired. Watch the video to the end to uncover shocking truths. Muammar al-Gaddafi was born on June 7, 1942 in the town of Sirte, Libya. He grew up in a nomadic Bedouin family, living in a desert tent as part of the al-Qaddafa tribe. At the time, Libya was under Italian rule, but by 1951 the country gained independence under King Idris, who was aligned with the West. As a young man, Gaddafi was deeply influenced by the Arab nationalist movement, particularly inspired by Egypt's president Gamal Abdel Nasser. In 1961, Gaddafi joined the military academy in Benghazi, later undergoing additional training in the United Kingdom for 4 months. Upon completing his studies, he swiftly advanced in Libya's military ranks. As dissatisfaction with King Idris grew, Gaddafi became involved in a secret group of young officers plotting to overthrow the monarchy. With his natural charisma and leadership skills, he quickly became the dominant figure in the movement. On September 1, 1969, while King Idris was receiving medical treatment in Turkey, the coup was successfully executed. At just 27 years old, Gaddafi emerged as Libya's new leader, taking the roles of Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and Chairman of the Revolutionary Command Council, the nation's new ruling authority. One of Gaddafi's first major actions was to eliminate foreign military presence from Libya, shutting down U.S. and British bases. He also forced international oil companies to renegotiate their contracts, ensuring a larger share of profits remained within Libya. In a push to reshape the country's identity, he replaced the Western Gregorian calendar with the Islamic calendar and prohibited the sale of alcohol. Following an attempted coup against him by fellow officers in December of 1969, Gaddafi imposed strict laws against political opposition. By 1970, he expelled the remaining Italian settlers from Libya and intensified his stance against Western influence, aligning himself with the broader Arab nationalist cause. He openly opposed Zionism and Israel, leading to the forced expulsion of Libya's Jewish population. Over time, his circle of close advisors grew increasingly smaller as he consolidated power among a tight-knit group of loyalists. His security services operated globally, intimidating and assassinating Libyan exiles who spoke against his rule. During these years, Gaddafi sought to distance Libya from Western alliances and instead fostered ties with the Middle East and Africa. He involved the Libyan military in conflicts in Egypt, Sudan, and Chad's civil war, asserting Libya's role in regional affairs. In the mid-1970s, Gaddafi released the first volume of The Green Book, a text outlining his ideology. The 3-part manifesto criticized liberal democracy and capitalism, while advocating for a unique form of governance based on so-called popular committees and communal ownership. However, in practice, Gaddafi and his inner circle controlled all key positions, hoarding oil wealth while suppressing civil rights. Corruption and brutal crackdowns on opposition left much of Libya's population struggling in poverty, even as the regime profited enormously from its vast oil reserves. Those who opposed his rule risked persecution, imprisonment, or assassination. Muammar Gaddafi ruled with an iron grip, but his leadership was as unorthodox as it was brutal. He surrounded himself with an elite squad of female bodyguards, always dressed in high heels and military uniforms. Declaring himself the King of Africa, he often insisted on staying in elaborate tents when visiting foreign nations. His flamboyant wardrobe, which looked more like theatrical costumes than political attire, added to his image as an eccentric leader. While these peculiarities caught the world's attention, they also served as a distraction from his regime's cruelty. Western leaders, unsettled by his unpredictability, dubbed him the Mad Dog of the Middle East. Gaddafi's influence extended beyond Libya, earning him international condemnation. His government was accused of financing anti-Western groups and supporting terror organizations across the globe. His connection to the Irish Republican Army, or IRA, was particularly controversial, leading to the United Kingdom severing diplomatic ties with Libya for over 10 years. In 1986, Libyan operatives were suspected of orchestrating a bombing at a West Berlin nightclub, an attack that killed 3 and wounded dozens. The United States responded swiftly. Under President Ronald Reagan's orders, American warplanes bombed key Libyan sites, including Gaddafi's compound in Tripoli. But Libya's most infamous act of terrorism occurred in 1988, when Pan Am Flight 103 exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland, killing all 259 people on board and 11 more on the ground. This attack, allegedly linked to Libyan intelligence, cemented Gaddafi's reputation as a dangerous figure. A year later, a French passenger jet was also downed in an attack widely attributed to his government, resulting in the deaths of 170 people. By the 1990s, Libya's relationship with Western powers began to change. Faced with increasing threats from Islamist militants challenging his rule, Gaddafi saw an opportunity to mend ties with the United States and Britain by sharing intelligence. In 1994, South African leader Nelson Mandela played a crucial role in persuading him to hand over the 2 primary suspects in the Lockerbie bombing. This marked the beginning of a slow but significant shift in Libya's global standing. Over the years, Gaddafi managed to rebuild diplomatic bridges. He was welcomed in European capitals, forging strong ties with leaders like Italy's Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi. Meanwhile, his son, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, immersed himself in London's elite social circles, cultivating an image of sophistication and reform. Critics, however, argued that this reconciliation was driven by economic interests rather than genuine political change, particularly Libya's vast oil reserves. By 2001, the United Nations had eased sanctions on Libya, allowing Western oil companies to negotiate lucrative contracts. The influx of wealth further enriched Gaddafi's inner circle, deepening the chasm between the ruling elite and the average Libyan citizen. While the regime presented a more cooperative face to the world, discontent simmered at home. After more than 40 years in power, Gaddafi's downfall came swiftly. In January of 2011, Tunisia's revolution forced President Zine al-Abidine Ben Ali from office, inspiring a wave of uprisings across the Arab world. When Egypt's Hosni Mubarak fell the following month, Libyans saw an opportunity to challenge their own dictator. Protests erupted in Benghazi and quickly spread nationwide. Gaddafi's response was ruthless. Security forces, along with hired mercenaries, opened fire on demonstrators, while attack helicopters bombarded crowds from the air. Instead of intimidating protesters, the violence fueled greater defiance. The dictator, defiant as ever, delivered rambling speeches on state television, dismissing the rebellion as the work of foreign agents, drug addicts, and al-Qaeda sympathizers. He called on his loyalists to crush the opposition, sparking intense clashes between government troops and rebels. By late February, the opposition had taken control of vast regions, forming the National Transitional Council, or NTC, as an alternative government. The battle for Libya escalated as rebel forces closed in on Tripoli, while much of the international community, including the United Nations, backed the NTC and demanded Gaddafi's removal. In March of 2011, NATO launched airstrikes and imposed a no-fly zone, decisively tipping the balance in favor of the rebels. A critical moment came in April, when a NATO strike killed one of Gaddafi's sons. By August, Tripoli had fallen, signaling the regime's imminent collapse. Meanwhile, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Gaddafi, his son Saif al-Islam, and his brother-in-law, charging them with crimes against humanity. In July, more than 30 nations officially recognized the NTC as Libya's legitimate government. Despite his desperate efforts to cling to power, Gaddafi had lost control of the country. His whereabouts remained a mystery, but his rule was effectively over. On October 20th, 2011, Libyan authorities confirmed the death of Muammar Gaddafi near his hometown of Sirte. Conflicting reports initially emerged. Some claimed he was killed in a firefight, while others suggested he was struck by a NATO airstrike. However, the gruesome reality soon became clear as graphic footage surfaced, showing his bloodied body being dragged through the street by victorious fighters. For months, Gaddafi and his closest allies had been in hiding, believed to be moving between secret locations in western Libya, where remnants of his loyalists still held out. As the news of his death spread, jubilant crowds flooded the streets, celebrating what many saw as the final triumph of their revolution. Although Gaddafi's death marked the end of his dictatorship, it did not bring lasting peace to Libya. In the years that followed, the country descended into turmoil, with various militia groups and political factions vying for control. The General National Congress took charge, but governance proved chaotic. Without a strong central authority, Libya became a battleground for competing interests. Benghazi, once a hub of the revolution, witnessed a wave of assassinations targeting political figures and activists, forcing many into exile. A string of interim prime ministers cycled through leadership, each struggling to restore order. What began as a popular uprising for democracy soon spiraled into an enduring conflict, leaving Libya fractured and uncertain about its future.